And we are live. Yeah, that's 10-second countdown plus the vignette. You know,
Oh
Larry
yeah.
Johnson, the great spy of all times.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
All right, the second
You'd
great.
you'd be
The first.
you'd be accused of overstating, lying. Other people
Yeah,
call it
yeah.
lying.
We don't do fake news here. Let's go with the second greatest.
Okay,
How are you doing, Larry Johnson, my good friend?
I am well.
Great, that's good. Unlike the U.S. stock market, as it looks like.
Well, actually, the market's bounced back today.
Yeah,
Um,
it's recovering.
the you know the real effect of these tariffs. um, it, it it's not so much about using the tariffs to bring more money into the U.S. Treasury, but this is, I think, uh, Trump is using tariffs as a way to try to restructure the U.S. debt, to see if they can, on the one hand, reduce right now it's like 37 trillion dollars and growing, to get that down. One way to get that down is you create an economic situation in which the interest that you're paying on your U.S. treasuries goes down. So just think what happens if you have a mortgage on your home and you're paying 5% interest, and then you can cut that to 2%. Well, the payments, the amount of interest you're paying declines dramatically. It's about half. So that may be what Trump's trying to do. The one that I don't think they've thought through is this pissing match with China. Because I just before we came on air, I was in the process of putting together analysis that United States, let's put it this way: China, 3% of all of its exports go to the United States. So it's not like it's dependent on the United States. I'm not aware of a single thing the United States produces where if China no longer had access to it, China would be going, oh man, we're screwed. We're in so much trouble. However, the United States, its Chinese exports or imports into the United States account for about 16% of all U.S. imports. Teslas, Apple phones. But more important than that are these rare earth minerals. Gallium, tungsten's not a rare earth mineral, but it's a critical mineral. Antimony. And I was just in the process of going down, looking at some of the weapons. Let's take tungsten as an example. Just pull this up. So tungsten is used by the U.S. defense industry for what they call kinetic energy penetrators, armor piercing ammunition. Also for high density fragmentation weapons. It's used in missile guidance and countermeasures. It's used for hypersonic weapons and well gun projections. Small arms and anti-material rifles. Okay? That's just tungsten. Well, China has now banned shipping tungsten to the United States. And say, well, screw them, we got alternatives. Well, let's see who the alternatives are. Oh, that would be Russia, North Korea, maybe. I think Vietnam.
Iran, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't think Iran in that case. But the point is that the United States can maybe replace tungsten with depleted uranium, which has a more damaging effect on the environment. But you get the antimony, gallium, germanium. All of those are critical components. And like in the case of antimony, I think between China and Russia, they control 90% of what's produced in the world. So my point in all this is that there are some very critical elements that the Chinese produce that the United States absolutely needs. And in this sense, getting into this pissing match with the Chinese is, I think, going to end badly for the United States.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about, and I didn't want to push this because I always like to ask the question and then perhaps thinking about it with my guests, of course, not pushing any type of narrative. But one thing that I've been thinking about, sorry, is that every great crisis, economic crisis, it creates great opportunity for funneling money to some people. We see the Great Depression, for example. It had create, you know, great billionaires. I don't know if it was billionaires by the time, but very
Yeah,
rich
yeah.
people. And the last one, the 2008, crash, uh, it raised some billionaires that right now we see on the government. Elon Musk, uh, uh, the guy from Amazon, the guy from Facebook, Zuckbot, and those guys are not inside the government, but they are kind of behind it. Was left over there. So one thing that I was thinking, I would just like your opinion, perhaps, I don't know, a thought on that. Do you think that it could be possible that the government is pushing? Of course, there is the good side of a crisis as well, cleaning bad business and all those stuff. And even the debt is it's a huge problem for the United States, of course. Um, but do you think that it could also be, a big heist? So summarizing.
Well, the assumption that Trump is making, how he conceptualizes the problem or the alleged problem, is false. The basic premise is all these countries around the world, they've been ripping us off. Okay, what's a ripoff? Are they selling us a product that doesn't work? Are they selling us a product that doesn't exist?
Overpriced.
Or are they selling us something that's of shoddy quality? Or are we actually, through our own demand, driving those purchases? And I would argue it's our own demand. Trump complains, well, people are driving around in BMWs and Audis and not driving Chevys and Fords. Okay, when I went to Moscow, I had to go to Washington, D.C., and I had to rent a car for a day to drive, get to the Russian embassy to get a visa, etc. Rented a car. It was a Chevy. What a piece of shit. You go something as simple as I got my cord to plug in my iPhone. Now, granted, a car from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't think about a USB port or any kind of connector like that. But now you do. And they put the connector up underneath like the ashtray. I had to get out of the car, lay down on my side just to see where the hell it was. Now, that's an example of an engineer who doesn't give a shit. They're not thinking this through ergonomically, what works, how does the human being interact with it. Meanwhile, in contrast, look at some of the cars China's now producing. They got all those bells and whistles. The reason people stopped buying a lot of Chevy and Ford sedans, particularly, is because they were not well made. They're crap. It's not like there's one thing to have a Mustang back in the 60s. I did. I got mine in the 70s, but mine was a 67 Mustang. Camaro. They used to make, Chevy and Ford used to actually, they turn, and they still, in a few particular type of vehicles, they do a great job. The Ford Raptor, the truck, it's, and you pay for it too. But
That's the point.
you don't understand that one of the reasons the United States has been running a trade deficit is we stopped making things. And yes, through government policy, we encourage companies to relocate overseas. And a lot of this goes back to, Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, I'll call it conservative macroeconomic policy that was, really started in the 19th century, late 18th century, on the notion that all we've got to, that basically in a totally free world, people will build what they build best. They'll have excess and they'll send it and trade it with other people. And that trade and commerce will be, everybody will have natural advantages and the world will get sort of an equilibrium, balance itself out. Well, we now know that's bullshit. It is, it's a fantasy contrived to, shore up capitalism. And I'm all in favor of capitalism, but let's not pretend that there's, this hidden hand out there working and moving around. It's just like with the stock market. It's a rigged game. A very, very small number of people control a lot of the market. So, Trump's imposing these tariffs. And then what did they announce about the Pentagon budget today? Oh, we're going to boost it to $1 trillion. Here's the problem. If you keep spending more money, and even if your income's going up, but you find more and more ways to spend it, yeah, you go bankrupt. And the United States has avoided bankruptcy up to this point because everybody wanted to have a dollar. And so we could basically lend dollars to the rest of the world. They'd give us money and we could go on a spending spree. We didn't have to worry about paying off the credit card. Now we may be on the threshold of a change in that era. I know that some right now believe, there's no way that the dollar is going to ever stop being the reserve currency. We actually may be entering that era with BRICS, because what this incident, Trump levying all these tariffs on everybody, and because of the power of the U.S. dollar, everybody's rushing to try and cut a deal with Trump. But in the back of their mind, I guarantee you, they're saying, I got to get out of this fucking relationship. This is toxic. This is actually like, let's say you're in a bad relationship. You got a toxic spouse. And unfortunately, when you got married, you put all your assets in his or her name. So you don't have your own assets. So you got to come up with an escape plan. So you can, you start siphoning money off to the side. You created your own secret bank account. You maybe secretly go out and get the deed on the house changed so it's only in your name. You want to do a variety of things so that you can ultimately walk away and say, goodbye, bitch, I'm out of here. That's where I think, countries, particularly like Vietnam, who are now, they're just, we thought you were our friend. They're going, no. Even though the bulk of a lot of what Vietnam is producing goes to other Asian countries, still, United States, basically we're saying, yeah, we didn't kill enough of you in the Vietnam War, so we're back to get some more out of you. That's partly how I'd look at it if I was Vietnamese. So this is this may end up being a Pyrrhic victory for Trump. It may have some of the economic benefits, short and midterm, that he's hoping. But long term, I think it's going to further weaken the U.S. role in the world as a hegemon. And some people say, great. They should be encouraged. Say, Trump, keep it up, Betty. Keep it up. Because you're essentially cutting your country's throat.
Well, to be quite honest about that last part, I do believe that this is good for the United States if it happens. Being the hegemon power, because well, first of all, that's just an illusion in my
Yeah.
view. Plus, and it's a toxic illusion, just like the relationship. Not only geopolitic people. Also marital tips from LarryCJohnson.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, well, this personal relationships, man, it doesn't matter whether it's people or states.
Yeah.
I mean, the same principles are involved. I am sad to say it, but the United States is very much we're behaving much like a wife beater. Someone who is yeah, you froze up there for a second. You're muted.
That's right. You came back. You also froze up for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's.
It's your friends from the CIA cutting us off.
Very, very well could be. So this is, the United States. When you go around and keep abusing other countries, at some point they're going to stand up and say, "No, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to find an alternative." So they'll find some accommodation temporarily, but ultimately they're not going to be standing solidly behind the United States as one of our crew.
Yeah, I was watching a video today where a Brazilian economist was a young guy, TikToker type of economist. He was talking, oh yeah, but it looks like the dollar as the reserve currency is about to go, and the only two substitutes are either the renminbi or implied Bitcoin. And I was like, that's not the only two options.
Yeah,
There
no,
are
there's gold.
There's 2025. This is a completely different era from the Bretton Woods times.
Yeah,
People can come up with things.
What people need to recognize and understand is we're entering a new economic order. Now, the Bretton Woods, which you mentioned, it took, I forget the precise number, it took 4 or 5 years for that system, really, from the time they created it to actually get it fully up, operating and functioning. So it was the special military, it was the reaction of the West to Russia's special military operation, the sanctions that were imposed, that accelerate, and at the same time, the growing threats the West was making, the United States in particular is making towards China, that accelerated the growth and expansion of BRICS. Because I think the Russians and Chinese looked at each other and said, man, those Americans, they're some crazy bastards. We better figure out a way to protect ourselves from them. We're not going to provoke them. We're not going to go up and punch them in the face. We'll be nice around them to the extent that we can. But we got to figure out a way to get out of this relationship. And so that's what's happening with BRICS now. That it is growing. And Iran is a central piece of that pie in building this new economic order. Russia and the Chinese are meeting Moscow with the Iranian delegation today. And you can bet your ass that they're talking about how to prevent the United States from attacking Iran, how to provide the United States with assurances that Iran is not building a nuclear warhead, which I fully believe that they are not, for a variety of reasons. But they see Iran as a critical outlet for north-south travel of goods. So it's called the north-south transport corridor, transportation corridor. You can say it originates in St. Petersburg in Russia, goes south through the Caspian Sea. You know, any products can be shipped on containers on board ships. You know, Caspian Sea is a big body of water. Then it's offloaded onto railroad cars and shipped down to the Arabian Sea, and put on container ships, or vice versa, take it off container ships and shipped back up the same way. It's not fully functioning right now, but it's been in use for, well, 90 years at least. The United States used it to get goods to the Soviet Union during World War II. In particular in the winter months when the northern approach was frozen over, they went south, came up through Iran. So Iran's got a very critical role to play there, and that's one of the reasons Russia recently signed this strategic cooperation agreement to shore up and provide security guarantees to keep that route open. And the United States is trying to shut it down, trying to prevent it. That's one of the reasons they want to see a regime change in Iran.
Yeah, I just, the last days we talked about already Iran, and it was, I was like, I don't believe the United States is going to go for it. But the last days we've seen some moves, well, especially the bombing of the Houthis, and some moves on that American base. I forgot the name, the Latin dude name. I forgot the name of the base.
What base were?
The close to on the Indic Ocean, close to
Oh, you mean Diego Garcia?
Diego Garcia. Yes.
Yeah,
While
the air base.
sending bombers, and just today I saw that the United States want to move away 10,000 troops from Europe, which is about time. But where are they going to put them? Do you think they are actually considering the possibility of going after Iran like that?
No, no,
No.
no. I can't say that there's nobody considering it or talking about it, but it's insane. Look, we had, God, how many troops did we have in Iraq? 200,000, 250,000. I'd have to go back and check the numbers. I think, but it was, you know, um, sizable contingent.
A lot of people.
We couldn't control Iraq, and Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. So I mean, the manpower requirement for the United States to build up a ground force capable of going into a place like Yemen or Iran, you'd be looking at 4 to 5 years, probably minimum, to build up, train the force, equip it. Because that's the other thing that the United States is failing to take into account. The Trump administration, they're firing off all these missiles and dropping these bombs in Yemen on targets that are usually no longer there. I mean, they can kill a bunch of people that are standing around in a circle or a form of circle. At a tribal meeting, they killed civilians, murdered them, but the actual weapon systems are underground and they're mobile. So the odds of the United States destroying those is real remote. So as the United States uses up its weapon system, they're not rebuilding or replacing them. Some of them they've actually gone out of production. I believe the Attack missiles, as an example. So, it's like buy a box of cigars. You got 20, 25 to start with. You start smoking them 2 a day. Guess what? By day 11, or day 12, you're going to be down to 1 cigar. Oops, no more cigars. That's what's happening with the missiles that they're launching out of these ships at inbound Houthi missiles. They're going to have to go reload. And the problem is when they go to reload, they're drawing down from a fixed number of missiles. So
I was watching, you just posted today a short video of your talks with Pepe Escobar, and the title was "What if the Houthis sink some, big ass aircraft
yeah,
carrier?"
yeah,
What if, Larry?
yeah. No, it's going to be it's going to be a great embarrassment to the Trump administration. They're going to be tempted to try to really lash out at the Houthis and kill some more Houthi civilians and just make matters worse. But it's going to further damage the U.S. reputation. Because look, right now, United States House, everybody said, "Hey, man, we're the baddest fighter on the world, man. We're tough. We
Oops, you froze again.
bombing the crap out of the Houthis for the last 16 months since December. Then you got 13, and now we're into the 17 months. We've been going at them for 17 months since the start of Operation Prosperity Guardian, and they're still standing. I thought you guys were the biggest and baddest in the world. You got the best military ever. And you can't defeat the Houthis. You can't stop the Houthis from launching missiles. Maybe you're not quite as good as you say you are. And other countries start saying, yeah, the Americans talk a good game, but boy, they don't show up, they don't deliver. And a successful attack on an aircraft carrier would further explode the myth of U.S. invincibility.
Yeah, exactly. It's and what I see is that it's always the U.S. telling people, you go fight for me, you go fight my war, and then someone do
Yeah,
and lose, but then it's okay. Who cares about Ukraine anyway? It's not the United States. Is that, as we said last week, is the incompetent Ukrainian army that didn't do what we say, how we say,
right.
and Trump stopped sending all this marvelous money and weapons, and well, then they lose.
Yeah, yeah.
They are bad. Talking about Ukraine, Larry, what's going on there? I don't even hear anything about Ukraine. I'm starting to get worried about Zelensky. I don't see his name for like 4 days already.
Well, I mean, if
Do you know if he's all right?
yeah, no, he's not all right. I mean,
That's for sure.
he's having a mental breakdown, I think. No, the Russian people are talking about, there's going to be a big Russian offensive in the spring. The Russian offensive has already started. They are moving simultaneously from south to north. They are entering Sumy in the north. They're continuing to, so they've crossed out of Kursk into Sumy, which is Ukrainian territory. They're basically being welcomed by the people there. They're sick and tired of Zelensky and his crew. They're moving around Kupiansk, Pokrovsk. It's just up and down the line, down into Zaporizhia. They're making fairly rapid progress there too. So the Russians are ultimately going to take all the territory up to the Dnieper. They're not going to stop. And Putin made that clear. Basically, he gave the Ukrainians about a 2 to 3 week window and that was 2 weeks ago. And so he may give them, they may have another week or two, but basically said, hey, the peace deal that we've offered is on the table. Withdraw your forces, get them out of our territory, because even though you keep saying you still occupy part of Zaporizhia and Kherson and a small sliver of the Donetsk, it's no longer yours. That's ours, and it always has been historically. So you need to get out. You need to disavow any intent of ever joining NATO. And you need to have get a new election, get a new leader in place, because the guy running the show right now is a neo-Nazi sympathizer, and he's illegally in office. He's overstayed his term and canceled all other elections. And until
And he
then,
has bad fashion taste.
yeah,
There, I said it.
Well, he's buying from the Che Guevara catalog. Okay. He is, but Putin made clear, if you don't do that, then you know what? Novorossiya is going to be in play. And Novorossiya takes territory that's on the west side of the Dnieper River too, up to and including Kiev. Russia, I think before this is all over, Russia will have taken Kiev, and the Ukrainian capital will be forced into some place like Lviv. And Russia will have Odessa. So
yeah, for sure.
They are, they're moving forward, and the United States is, we have no leverage over the Russians. Oh, we're going to hit you with more sanctions.
Go ahead.
They sit there and they say, great, knock yourselves out.
Which was interesting because Russia is not on this tariffs list.
Well, the only thing that is still traded with the United States is some uranium. Russia exports uranium, and I think they still are allowed to export fertilizer, because the United States absolutely needs the fertilizer. Well, but apart from that, Russia's not making and sending anything to the United States, and vice versa. Well, of course, I will say that a lot of America, you can still find a lot of American junk food makes its way. They smuggle that shit in, or they avoid Western sanctions.
It's so crap that who cares about that? Just leave without sanctions.
It's the all the sugar-laden junk food that made America fat again. Or is not fat again, just made America fat.
Period.
Math.
Maffa.
Math. No, it's not again, man.
Math. The last time I've been in Brazil, it was because we also have a very, oil and sugarish food. Well, sugarcane is one of our specialities in Brazil. I'm from Rio de Janeiro, and Rio de Janeiro is known for, fitness bodies.
Yeah.
People were fat, and not everyone. Of course, there was still fitness bodies, but people were quite fat. And I'm not saying with that with proud, because I'm not myself doing all perfect, but people there got very fat, and I got impressed that, in all the shopping centers, there were like a lot of new burger houses, gourmet burger houses. And I like hamburgers, but variety is also pretty cool. So it was taken by hamburger houses, small ones, big ones, Outback and Taco Bell. Taco Bell is not hamburger, but it's not Mexican food.
Like I said, the American junk food.
Yeah, it was a bit surprising. And here in Europe, for example, you see a lot of American junk food, but you also see good things from all over, like French food, kebab, stuff like that.
Well, look, it's been going on for a long while. When I, good God, 40, was it 44 years ago? No, 43 years ago, when I was living in Honduras, 1978. They brought this 5-year-old boy my wife's a nurse, and they brought this 5-year-old boy to the clinic. He weighed 20 pounds. He was, 5-year-old should weigh 30, 35 pounds at least. His upper body was skeletal, just skin hanging over. From his waist down, the legs were swollen. So he was carrying a lot of fluid. But it turned out his parents had died, and he's been raised by his grandmother. And the only thing he wanted to eat and drink, instead, at that time, sort of the people in the campo, their normal meal would be, you get up in the morning, you have eggs, beans, frijoles, tortillas, maybe a little bit of rice. And then lunch, you'd mix it up. You'd have just beans and rice and tortillas. So you get the corn, the beans. And then for, dinner, you'd do beans, rice, tortillas, maybe eggs, maybe a little meat, chicken, rarely ate beef. On that, eating like that, I lost 50 pounds during my time there.
Wow.
I weighed about 145. Now, the time I got dysentery, that helped with the weight loss too. But okay, but
I got you.
But here was this little boy, and what he was asking to eat was pan, white bread, and a Coca-Cola, full sugar. There wasn't Diet Coke back then yet. And that's what this kid out in the middle of 50 years ago, almost, out in the middle of nowhere, it's 48 years ago now, I guess, was, basically dying of kwashiorkor. Now in fact, when he showed up at the clinic, he had an older brother that brought him. The older brother said he had left another sibling at home because they had to walk. The guy had walked like 10 miles to get to the clinic, carrying this kid. It shows you just sort of how tough some of these people are. We found out later that when he said this, because he said, I brought Hector. Hector is the sickest. So we brought him, and he said, but the other sibling is sick, but not as bad. But when he got back home, the other sibling had already died. Okay.
Oh, Jesus.
And so my wife took Hector next door we had a kitchen attached to the clinic. And she made up a mixture of bread and milk just to see if he had and he still had the desire to eat. So the fact that he hadn't reached that point of starvation where he didn't want to eat anymore, but he started eating, and he lived with us for 2 months. Then we got it until he was healthy, and then a local Honduran family that coffee farmers, Doña Julia y Don Babino, adopted him, and he grew up. So he's now, good God, he's 78. So he's probably a 44-year-old man today.
Awesome. Great story.
Yeah.
Great story. Well, half of happy ending. The other sibling didn't make it.
Yeah. I mean, it was,
Too bad.
but the point of this was that here was Coca-Cola, this U.S. invented product with, it's not healthy to drink. I understand, man. it's designed to make you want to drink it. It triggers some of those pleasure sensors in the brain, and man, it's a little bit like cocaine, because I guess the original Coke did have cocaine in it, you know. But now they got synthetic
It's
Coke.
coca
Coca,
leaf, right?
yeah,
Coca leaf.
cocaine. So
Yeah. Well, everything involved, the colors, our sensor, um, activate the sensors and the colors and the taste, the sugar and now also the salt. Everything is made for it. Yeah.
yep,
It's a drug. It's very addictive. It's very addictive. Yeah. Larry, I guess I have asked everything I had for today. Do you think that I bypassed something that's extremely important to be talked about?
yeah, the war with Iran. So we learned
I
yesterday.
asked about that.
Well, we didn't talk about the fact that the negotiations that are supposed to take place on Saturday
Yes.
going to be hosted by Oman. Um,
Oops. You have frozen.
Trump is describing it as direct talks, and we'll see. Trump's making threats. I still think if Trump chooses to attack Iran, it'll be an unmitigated disaster for the United States. But I think that Russia and China's intervention on behalf of Iran are going to make a critical difference there that will, I think, ultimately probably force the United States to reconsider its plans. We'll see. There's a lot at stake here, and this is, I think Trump's making some very bad decisions.
That's sorry. One very quick last question, Larry, and that you froze. Do you hear me?
Now you're back. Now I see you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, temporarily froze.
Yeah. Every now and then it's temporarily getting frozen. I have one very quick question, Larry, and this it's do you think that because the situation for the United States is not good, economically, they are, just mumbling and uh, trumping into things. Do you think that with the pace that the United States is following now, the path and the pace, do you think it's even possible for the United States not to have a very big internal problem?
Well, what do you mean? Economically, politically?
You know, everything together, because I
No,
think everything's
again, if uh, I think uh, maybe there's a silver lining to imposing these tariffs on China, that it'll end up actually handcuffing the U.S. military, that they'll be incapable of carrying out some of the operations that Trump might want them to carry out. So we'll be forced into peace just because we've run out of supplies. The America's seriously divided. You've got this strong transgender movement. Now it's a minority. I think it's like you got 20% of the people that are embrace this fanatically, but it's still a sizable minority, and that that could trigger some problems. Trump has scored a couple of important court victories in the last 2 days. So efforts to try to tie his hands and prevent him from firing government employees or deporting Venezuelans or Tren de Agua gang members. Court said no, he's got full authority to do that. So um, and actually the economy has been, the inflation has slowed. The Jobs numbers went up unexpectedly, so people are getting employed, not unemployed, despite firing a lot of people in the Washington D.C. area. They're taking a hit up there. The job outlook in Northern Virginia and Maryland, the areas surrounding Washington D.C., Montgomery County, Prince George's County, that's going to be bad for them. But the rest of the country may turn around. So if Trump can deliver on his promises of peace, then he actually, I think, will be able to salvage the economy. But that doesn't look like he's going to do that. He's
Oops, froze again. Come on.
if he tries to escalate, then he's and are you back?
Yeah, you still frozen. You still freeze. Okay, now you're back.
Yeah.
Uh,
So on your end, are you seeing yourself or not?
I'm seeing myself, and you now. It's moving. You froze
Okay.
for a while.
All right.
But
Well,
then you came back.
we better halt. We better stop it there then. Okay.
All right. I think we got pretty much the big question about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. LarryCJohnson, my good friend, thank you once again for coming, and I hope to see you next week. Remember, everybody, all the links for Larry are on the description. You can follow him on sonar21.com. It's right there. And see you next time, Larry. Bye
Thanks so
bye.
much, man. Bye.
Oop.